Hello and welcome to Anime Memories, and on this episode, I'm going to be talking about Season 1 of Attack on Titan. This show was a phenomenon when it first came out. Praise for it was so widespread that it became one of the few anime that broke into the mainstream. While I got to it rather late, I quickly understood why it became highly revered. From the very start, it sucked me in and I couldn't stop watching. And being that Season 2 is coming out soon, I thought now would be the perfect time to go back and refresh my memory of the first season. So, let's get into it. 100 years ago, these massive humanoid creatures called Titans appeared and almost wiped out the entire human race in the span of a few days. The surviving population managed to come together and build a city surrounded by 3 walls in order to keep the Titans out. This worked for many years, until a gigantic Titan called the Colossal broke down the outer wall, allowing the smaller Titans to infiltrate the city and slaughter everyone. During this massacre, the main character Eren sees his mother get eaten while trying to retreat to safety. Now that he's an adult, he joins the military to defend his city and take revenge for all the people that died. So, allow me to start with something that pretty much every reviewer has said about this show. Attack on Titan doesn't give a fuck about its characters. Regardless of how much plot armor you think someone has, they're not safe. Nobody's safe. Because of this, the show builds an insane amount of tension extremely quickly. And it keeps this tension going by moving at the pace of a rocket ship. It never gives you a chance to become bored, making it very easy to marathon. Unfortunately, by moving this fast, it sacrifices a bit in terms of character investment, since a lot of the people that get taken out don't get any development. Although they didn't need a huge amount of character development in order for me to care about them, because these death scenes were just so brutal. I would feel bad for anyone who dies by getting eaten or ripped apart. After a few horrifying demises, I wanted to see everyone survive, even the no-namers. However, the most messed up parts for me didn't have anything to do with the Titans, or at least not directly. It was those times when the soldiers gave into their fear and started acting selfishly. There was one scene where a dude was just cleaning out his rifle for about 30 seconds. He was just cleaning it, and then when a squad member turns to him and questions about how that's going to help them against the Titans, he shoots himself. That is the level of pessimism we're dealing with, and it got to me. For a while I was in a legitimately dreary mood. But I didn't stay that way for long, because it does get more positive, and the reason for that is this show's beacon of hope, the protagonist Eren. In the first episode, you wouldn't think he'd turn into any kind of saviour, since as a kid, he was a whiny little prick who needed to force his morality on others. The turning point was his mother's death. Once he witnessed that, he gained this insatiable drive to improve himself and take back his city. He also shows that he's a charismatic leader by motivating others to act courageously and making them think that if they fight hard enough, they can actually win. His optimistic presence makes it seem like one day, humanity might achieve the impossible and gain victory in their war against the Titans. So, as you might expect from an apocalyptic series like this, the writing is highly emotional. There's tons of yelling and screaming, with a lot of lines about how all of this is pointless, there's no way they're going to beat the Titans, everybody's going to die, and so on. This can get irritating, but for the most part, I thought it was appropriate considering the dangerous world they live in. If my chance of death was that high, I'd probably be wailing like a coward as well. Now, while I believe the plot is very engaging, it does have its negatives, with the first one only being a minor annoyance. A few minutes at the beginning of every single episode is spent on recaps, and for someone like me who was watching everything back to back, this was completely useless. Something that was a bit more of a major annoyance though, were the 2 randomly placed flashback episodes that flesh out events of the past. Now I get that certain flashbacks might contain, say, twist elements to the story or hidden information about the character's motives, so it makes sense to hold them back. But these episodes didn't contain any of that, so I can't understand why they decided to save them for later. Whatever their reasoning was, it totally screws up the pacing. There was one time when it was right in the middle of a climactic battle and the episode ended on a massive cliffhanger. So with great anticipation, I clicked on the next episode and it goes back to when everyone was in soldier training. This disrupts the story's momentum so much. When I'm invested in what's happening now, I don't want it to suddenly cut to something that happened months ago. While I did enjoy these backtracking episodes, I would have enjoyed them a lot more if they were told in chronological order. The final problem is that in its current state, the ending's incomplete with numerous hanging plot threads. The two biggest ones are the mystery of the cellar of Aaron's house, as well as his father's research. They push those plot points super hard, however, we haven't received any meaningful information about them. We also haven't gotten any kind of explanation as to why the Titans came into existence, but depending on how the narrative goes, we may never get that. I'm sure that a lot of these are going to get cleared up in Season 2, however, as it is now, the conclusion is very unsatisfying. Now, while the mortality rate in this world is through the roof, there's a core group of supporting characters that has managed to stay alive, and these are the people that I grew deeply connected to. Between them, there's a huge variety of behaviours and beliefs. Some are funny, others are badass, some are kind, and a few are cold-hearted bastards. When a captain said in a training episode that they're gonna mould these soldiers into blank slates, I got kind of worried that all of them would get stripped of their individuality. However, they're not your standard blank slate soldiers. They're one of the best and most diverse supporting casts I've seen in anime. Again though, no one is safe, so just be aware that some of the characters that you've grown attached to could be taken out at any moment. In the visual department, this show has an incredibly dark and melancholy art style. If any of you are into video games, you would have heard the criticism of Gears of War and other third-person shooters that overuse the colours grey and brown. This series does the exact same thing. The environments look muted with very little vibrance, even when it's set in a field or forest. Personally, I think this was a fantastic choice. The art works well with the bleak dialogue and atmosphere. One of the more interesting facets of the art for me is how the characters are drawn. All of them have these pronounced black outlines with an excessive amount of shading on their necks and faces. This was somewhat off-putting at first, until I noticed how much their facial expressions stand out this way. You really get to see how terrified they look. Now, with a high-profile series like this, you would expect it to have excellent, mind-blowing animation, but it was surprisingly underwhelming. Sure, the action is fluid and exciting, but outside the fights, it's nowhere near as good as it could have been, especially with how many shortcuts they take. There's a lot of scenes with very limited movement, and there's also a ton of zooms and panning. I will admit that I might have been hoping for too much and coming in with unfair expectations. However, I still feel that it's disappointing that the animation here is only kinda good. And my disappointment continues with the soundtrack, which was so lackluster that it's barely worth mentioning. I rarely ever noticed any music, and the few songs that did catch my attention were lame generic pop rock. While there was the occasional track that gave me goosebumps, my excitement was more the result of me being invested in the story rather than the music being of good quality. On a more positive note though, the dub is great. Funimation put their usual high standards to this. It's nothing out of the ordinary for them, and I don't think it's going to change any hardened sub-only fans' mind. However, it's more than sufficient. Many of the reviews that I've done during my time on this site have had the purpose of bringing attention to either an unknown or forgotten anime. That is definitely not the case here, since, let's be real, you've all seen this already, and I'm not bringing anything new to the conversation. This was mostly for myself. It gave me a reason to go back and re-experience one of the most engaging shows that's come out in the past decade. I really enjoyed myself, and I hope that Season 2 will be even better. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you have any feedback, feel free to leave a comment, and if you want to see more, feel free to subscribe as well. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.